Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of There Goes Tokyo Remix, which we're totally recording at such a different time from the last time.
Absolutely. Where'd it go?
You know, we do things that's perfect schedule, yeah.
Yes.
No sarcasm at all. But, okay, this time we are going to be talking about a big one. We're actually, with this edition of There Goes Tokyo, we've kind of been bouncing around, kind of steering a little away from Godzilla because that was our original focus.
Yeah.
But I know that there's going to be kind of a hiatus probably coming up. I don't know when I'll be available to do podcasts with Justin really for the rest of the year, coming up pretty soon. So I don't know if that was really your original idea, but I'm curious. You brought this up, and that surprised me.
That was kind of my thought. Like, if we give you folks nothing else this year, you get a really, really awesome season finale with this. And I promise we will be back. I'm not sure when we're going to be back, but we will be back.
Oh yeah, I want to do it again. Probably next year. We'll let you guys know, or you can check it out on the channel if you're curious. I'll put up some announcements, but. In the meantime, yeah, we can talk about Shin Godzilla, which is really weird because I'm delighted to talk about it, and I'm glad that we are kind of going back to Godzilla again.
Yeah.
But it is funny because I think we originally did our Godzilla countdown videos in anticipation for the 2014 one.
Correct.
Which is quite a while ago now, and we've had a couple of the American Godzilla movies since then, so it's kind of amazing. But we've been diverting a lot recently, but somehow... we never talked about Shin Godzilla, and I was surprised. I just told you this off air, but I or in last episode or something, I never actually reviewed this movie on my channel, which really surprised me.
I was going to say, I'm still slack-jawed on that one.
Well, I think, if I can recall, I remember it was coming out, and I think it was one of those things where it was, like, limited in
theaters. It did, like, a 3 nights only thing.
Yeah, so I didn't see it in theaters, and I had to wait a little while, and I think I ended up watching it online somehow, maybe like a year or two after the fact. Mm-hmm. But when I saw it, I really enjoyed it. But I know that you have kind of different feelings about it.
I've still got a little bit of a mixed reception on it. It doesn't mean that it's a bad review.
No, it's fine. No, it's fine. And that's why I thought it might be an interesting conversation, because I watched it again.
I wholeheartedly agree.
But I know you wanted me to do the synopsis. And which is, of course, if I was getting it detailed, it would be really long. And I just watched it again, so I don't really have an excuse. But it's pretty simple.
Yes.
Basically, it's like 2016. Godzilla comes back. Okay, but in this iteration, again, metaphorically speaking, but this time in this version, it's the first time Godzilla's never really shown up in any capacity. So it really, he shows up in Tokyo as this creature, and really, it focuses on this one guy that creates a defense team to kind of figure out what to do about Godzilla, to take him down. But really, the whole movie, in addition to Godzilla kind of stomping through Tokyo and attacking it, is really just the government and everybody related. How would they react? How do they deal with it? All the counters to that. And essentially, after a couple different waves of issues, they do find a way to stop Godzilla using this coagulant thing to freeze him, which is, I think, similar to Destroyer, right? They were trying to freeze him with the core.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so very similar to that. Maybe that's a reference. There's also kind of a subplot with dealing with this woman who's like the Japanese representative from the U.S., who's there, and there's a lot of little subplots, but it's basically just a lot of red tape, a lot of bureaucracy.
Yeah, it's probably the most political kaiju film we've reviewed / going to review.
I think it's the most political kaiju movie maybe ever. I mean, that's kind of
there.
It's really up there, and that's actually something I like about it quite a bit. But the other little detail about this one, if you haven't seen Shin Godzilla or Godzilla Resurgence, as I think it was marketed in the U.S., was that right?
I think they were trying to do that, and then they decided, okay, we got it. This is clearly a Toho movie. Why should we hide what it is? And they decided, okay, it's Shin Godzilla.
It's Shin Godzilla. But the interesting thing that also separates this movie is that we get Godzilla kind of also sort of a build-up. Even though he shows up early in the movie, he's kind of this constantly evolving creature, kind of reacting to his surroundings to improve. Like, he's got this weird... It's kind of hard to say that he's underdeveloped, maybe more fish-like, mutated, almost like he looks kind of undead for a lot of the movie. With his internals exposed, and he's slowly evolving until he becomes kind of closer to the classic Godzilla look, but somehow much more frightening and scary looking than maybe ever. And that's really the main little detail that's different. Otherwise, it's kind of your standard Godzilla premise, but with a lot of the political reaction to it.
Yes.
Really a deep dive into how the government would respond. And I know how I feel about it, but I really am curious to hear about you because I remember that. From what I understand, I think I know a lot of people really like this movie. I think some people had problems with it, but for the most part, I thought the reception of this was good. I know I was quite blown away by it the first time, and but I remember you were kind of like you never really went into a lot of detail, but you said you had some issues with it.
I do, and don't get me wrong, we're going to have a very long discussion here about that soon.
Okay,
but I remember hearing about this and thinking, wow, we're going to get another Toho Godzilla movie. I never thought I'd see this happen, and I thought it was going to be one of those things we didn't get until much later, and I was just constantly looking, hoping it was going to play around here, and all of a sudden I saw it and I was thinking, okay, I'm going to get my tickets. This is going to be really exciting.
Sure.
They posted a thing on our local theater's website saying we're treating this like an R rating. I was like, whoa, this is going to be a dark Godzilla movie.
Kinda, yeah.
And then comes the movie.
Uh-oh.
So to really understand my issues with
Oh, no.
I shouldn't say my issues so much as my disappointment with this movie because my issues make it sound like I hate this movie. I don't.
It does, honestly.
Yeah.
You're always like, oh, man. Oh, man.
Yeah, it makes it sound like I really despise this movie. I own it. I've seen it 3 times.
Okay, that's not
There's
too hateful.
things I really, really, really like about Shin Godzilla, and if this is where Toho proceeds to go from here, I'm excited to see how things develop. But
was this a hype issue for you? It sounds like it was a little bit.
It was and it wasn't. So to really get to the core of my disappointment, we have to start at the beginning.
Okay.
And that is with, if you'll forgive the ad hominem, listeners, the director. For those who are unaware, Shin Godzilla was directed by a man by the name of Hideaki Anno.
Yeah.
If, for those not in the know, probably one of, if not the most controversial anime spearheader.
Okay.
He made Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Yeah, that's what I know him from, yeah.
Which, shall we say, has a polarizing reception based on things that happen.
You either love it or hate it, yeah.
You love it or you hate it. I'm somewhere in between the two.
Kind of me, actually.
And it's I think it's a good representation of my issues with him because he starts out essentially making a mecha kaiju show,
sort of,
and then runs out of money and decides that okay, the last couple episodes are going to be these really deep dives into the main character's psyche, and then just sort of ends.
Well, and then you got a bunch of movies,
which may or may not be canon depending on who you talk to.
It really does.
But needless to say, people either were thrilled by the mystery, or if you were expecting a big kaiju beat 'em up show,
you
really
really
underwhelmed.
It depends, I guess. Yeah.
So, but my biggest issue with Hideaki Anno's overall style is he's a man who really, really, really wants to say something.
Yeah.
The problem with Anno as a filmmaker is he wants to say something, but he doesn't actually have anything to say. He just wants you to think that there's something, and then just calls it something. So, he'll throw up a lot of weird images on the screen and make you think that it's going somewhere, and whether or not it does is really up to the viewer, which some could argue is interesting. I think it's kind of pretentious, but...
Well, maybe that's where I disagree with you. I think that, if anything, this movie definitely has something to say. It's kind of written all over the whole movie. Because, I mean, to be honest...
It is and it isn't.
Okay.
Which kind of brings up the other point I have with this, which is...
Sure.
It has things it wants to say, but is it particularly effective in its message? And I would argue it's almost counterproductive to the overall tradition of Godzilla, kind of this anti-war, anti-nuclear parable, and more into Japanese nationalism, which just feels really, really strange.
I know you've mentioned that before, and the movie does come off a little nationalist, and there's little bites at the U.S. In there quite a bit. I do remember you kind of mentioning that before, and I do understand that criticism, and that's probably one of the minor issues I do sort of have with it, is that they do kind of do little jabs here and there that kind of borderline on satire, but they never really go there. My least favorite part of the movie, especially watching it again, was that she's like an American Japanese descended person who is young, and she's clearly supposed to be just the pretty girl in the movie, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna be."
I have no idea how she got away without getting a Razzie.
And I'm gonna, well, because it's it's foreign, so it's hard to judge. But and she's gonna, she's got this power move where she might end up being president at in her 40s.
I was gonna say
if for the U.S. and I get it's kind of like almost like a transference of like let's be our own people now. But here's the thing. Even though I do kind of get that, I don't feel particularly comfortable really giving Japanese filmmakers a hard time about giving the U.S. crap about having treated them badly, because there's kind of a big history of that, which is directly connected.
Oh no,
to Godzilla, and like that's why I don't disagree with what you're saying really, but I'm like, how many American movies to this day use other countries as scapegoats and
no, Joe.
One dimensionally.
Make no mistake here.
So I'm like, if you jab the U.S., I'm like, whatever.
I'm not necessarily against getting jabs at the U.S. Okay. I love Team America World Police, which is a essentially 90-minute jab at the U.S. That
is true. That is true.
But the problem with Shin Godzilla is the jabs are so poorly developed. It just sounds like a very angry Japanese man writing very poorly written American characters and like trying to make me convinced that, oh, look how incompetent they are.
Well, look, we've watched a number of Godzilla movies before, and some of them do have Americans in them, like in '85 or whatever.
Yeah,
and
it's not uncommon.
They've always been a little cheesy, because why not? I mean, to be fair, that's why I'm like I get it, but that's not really a big stretch.
Yeah, like I don't hate the satire angle. I actually think a good Godzilla movie can absolutely play that up. Gojira plays that up.
That's true.
And I mean, even some of the later ones, I would even go so far as to say Godzilla versus King Ghidorah has very, very big, almost to a fault, satirical angles to it. Okay. But the idea of the whole thing was like taking responsibility, taking ownership, and
yeah, that's a big part of it.
Shin Godzilla just kind of flirts with that and then decides, no, we're right. And I kind of left a really bad taste in my mouth of like, okay, you got this guy who's kind of flirting with the idea of, okay, are we making the right decisions here? Are we really aware of the gravity of this situation? And probably one of the biggest issues with this movie is he's trying to get us to know everybody, but the problem is he's got like 60 characters.
Yeah,
and
it's an ensemble.
Honestly, I couldn't tell you half of their names, because they're in the movie, but they're so few and far between, and he keeps flashing them up like they're in this like weird documentary style that only kind of works. Like the brilliance of Ishiro Honda's Gojira was we kind of got to know the characters through the moments of the movie. We got to experience kind of like separate stories, and that gave it a lot more heart to it. That gave us a kind of like in the midst of things, and it kind of even complemented the urgency of the story.
Okay.
The problem with this thing is that because you don't care about everybody, because you have really no interest in what's going on, you're really just waiting around for the next big Godzilla scene. And make no mistake, listeners, the Godzilla scenes in this movie are fantastic. It is the first time I can honestly say since I've seen 1954 that Godzilla has been on screen. And all I could think is, oh my gosh.
Oh man.
Like, there is legitimate, like my heart is pounding.
There's fear.
And I love that. I think that's so cool. But the problem is this is a 2-hour movie and Godzilla only has maybe 30 minutes of screen time.
Maybe a little
Those scenes are great.
Yeah.
I think the stakes get better as they go along, but because I don't care about anybody, it really makes a 2-hour runtime feel like 3.
It does feel a little long. I'll admit I think 2 hours might be a little long for what they did. You bring up a very interesting point, and I can't say that I feel exactly the same way, but I could understand the issue, and you're actually bringing up an interesting discussion that we don't really talk about too much on the show, but we probably should, is there seems to be kind of this idea, this thrown away idea that I know you mentioned, I think, with the most recent Kong versus Godzilla movie, is that, a lot of monster fights, that's what people really want.
Yeah.
The human story doesn't really matter. And I think we watched enough of these giant monster movies to know that that's usually not the case.
Yeah. Like, how do I put this? We all say that we want a big Godzilla beat 'em up movie.
And kind of do.
To varying degrees we do.
Sure.
But no matter what way you slice it, no matter how beam grade your movie gets, you need to have us have something that's going to make us want to stick around to see what happens.
Well, stakes. You have to have people we want to see make it through the movie.
Yeah. You have to have some sort of element that makes us curious and makes us care.
Connect, yeah.
No matter how long your action sequence is, if there's no stakes, if there's no intrigue, people are going to check out.
That's true. And
that's kind of where it falters, is it has a lot of moments where we should care. We see people literally fleeing for their lives, and it's only kind of sporadically there. And most of the time when it's the most effective is when it's going much more broader scope, where you're just seeing literally an entire city get torn to shreds.
Well, I kind of got sort of an emotional resonance from the movie and the devastation, which I thought was sort of echoing the core idea of the original Godzilla movie. And I know what you're saying, because the first one really is one of the best examples of just, yes, we've got this horrifying destructive force, but there's those central characters and their relationships, their motivations, that is really the heart of the movie, though. Like, yeah. I mean, is it Dr. Was it Urasawa? I forget. I actually forget his name. But the guy that makes the oxygen destroyer.
Right.
You know, I mean, he's a great character, and he... You know, his sacrifice is such a big deal, and you know, you've got sort of the love triangle with him and the other one. And granted, maybe this isn't exactly something that people automatically think of when they think of Godzilla, but I do think that Godzilla would be nowhere near as famous of a creature if that first movie hadn't been so well done and there hadn't been so many characters we felt about. Because one of the strongest things about the original movie is the impact of when we see the devastation, when we see after Godzilla has attacked the city and all those people in the hospital, the radiation burns, and you've got like all the girls in the church, and they're like singing, and everybody's just trying to come together, and there's this like feeling of sadness and kind of like, okay, what's going to happen next? So it's really goes in dark places. Obviously, it's one of the things I've always liked about it, is that it has no problem tackling those themes, and to some degree, Godzilla's kind of always had that, even though he's bounced around tonally. I do agree that I guess the movie doesn't have like a lot of detail around central characters that you really, and there's not a lot of focus on them. That is true.
Yeah.
But I think the reason why I didn't mind is because I think that he was approaching it from a very unique angle. Because there's no other Godzilla movie that has done this before. Where it's not really about an individual character or a couple individual characters as a character study. It's looking at the government of Japan,
I was going to say,
as a nation, and Tokyo as a city, and what that process is like. And it's like the government of Japan, all these little characters, their dialogue. It is about that process, and it's almost like that energy, that flow, that body as a character. And I really liked the thing, and that's really the thing about the movie that I really liked, is that maybe it is a lot of style with the editing and the shots, but to me, this seemed like a really good representation of just what would happen if Godzilla showed up. And just the level of detail with, one general's order has to be countermanded. Okay, did this administrator sign off on? Okay, well, this department can't make a move. Well, we have nothing in the rule book about this, so who's actually in charge? We don't know. How the media reacts, how the economy is affected. And granted, it's like scatter shots, but I really think like when I feel like I'm in the hallways with these people, I'm like, this seems like this is the government responding to this crisis, and I find that in and of itself to be kind of awesome.
Yeah, I think one of the few early moments of the satire actually working is they aren't originally thinking, oh wow, this is a threat. They're thinking, oh wow, this is an economic punch.
Or like, oh man, like, okay, well, what's the best move? Well, you see, like, voters will dislike you if you don't do this. Okay, well, and that was one of the things. Like, all right, how will I look? If I fire on civilians, like there's all these different angles, and I like that they touch upon. Everyone's got different motivations, and some people are thinking about, well, I got to be careful about how I navigate this, because how will
it be up for election? Yeah,
in a couple of years, like maybe if things go a certain way, maybe I can use this to my advantage. So, I mean, not saying they're all terrible people, but it's interesting that all these different people have different motivations, and they seem like real people to me. But I do agree that with the exception of like the main guy and that girl that I don't really like that much, we don't really get to know them.
No, and some of them are interesting characters, like the the people that end up actually finding how to turn the tide in this story,
the scientists,
don't actually feel like the most prim and proper scientists that we've known before. They're like just regular people that just happen to know a lot about what to do here and what could be done.
And that was actually one of my favorite little lines in the movie. Is like, okay, you weirdos, loners, geeks, look, you guys, they might have had run-ins with the government. Like, look, we don't care. You're here because we need you.
Yeah.
Figure this out. Like, I like that they just pulled people from wherever.
Yeah, I think that was an interesting approach, and arguably the least Japanese thing about this movie is like, okay, we're going to do without honorifics.
Yeah.
We're all on the same page here. We're all on the same team.
Well,
what do we do?
And that's the theme I like about the movie, which is why I connected with this. And yeah, maybe it's a little nationalistic, but I thought that's like the classic spirit of like, let's come together. Japan's been through this before. Let's let's screw the class issues. Let's screw our motivations. In 10 years there might not be a Japan. We have to work together. Mm-hmm. And I really thought that was fine. Yeah, maybe it's borders into a little cheesy, but Godzilla's done far worse.
Oh no, it's preachy, but it gets a little too far at some points, but
maybe a little at some
points.
points.
What kind of gives it a little bit of saving grace is at the end there is a sense of, okay, this might seem like a victory, but we're just literally getting started. We don't know. Yeah. We don't know if this is completely resolved. We don't know how much blowback we're going to get from the destruction that's already happened from this.
Oh yeah, that's true. Because he already did so much destruction by the end of the movie. And I did like, that there was that sense of that global unity, like, okay, we will all join in to help you rebuild. And there was some resistance about the French or the Germans, whoever, sharing data. But people are like, no, we have to work together. And I got to say, I really kind of felt like some of the best acting in the movie was really from just really the main characters, but even like the Department of Agriculture that ends up being the one guy standing that become the prime mm-hmm. minister. There's all this pressure from other nations about, okay, we don't know how to beat Godzilla. Let's drop this nuke on Tokyo, on Japan.
Yeah.
And obviously there's a lot of feelings about that, a lot of baggage, and the
how can we talk him out of this?
It's basically like there has to be another way. Like we just obviously we don't want that to happen infrastructurally, but like the spirit of our people, like we do not want to have this done again because of the legacy. And I just like that line where the prime minister's like, he was just Department of Agriculture, so things have spiraled out. So it's like, man, I never thought I'd be the guy that might drop another bomb on Japan. Yeah. Like that's how I'll be remembered. Like, and I feel the weight to scenes like that. There's some good drama there.
Yeah, no, and I think that's sort of why the so many characters hurts it is you have those moments, and because you don't get to know anybody really that well, it ends up hurting it. That being said, though, the one thing I really, really enjoyed about this movie on viewing number 3 is I loved how Anno actually shoots this movie.
It's shot well.
It's probably the best, from a cinematography standpoint, shot Godzilla movie. Like,
it looks good.
He finds a way to not only capture interesting angles, but he does a really, really, really good job of putting you in the moment. It doesn't feel cinematic. It feels like
you're there.
What if you were here in the midst of a Godzilla attack? And that's kind of what I wanted the American movies to do. Like, get away from the whole, okay, we're trying to just cover a global perspective or insert boring protagonist here.
And you'll literally have like a shot far away of the entire scene and Godzilla fighting some other monster. You never feel like you're there in the midst of the destruction. As much as I really don't like the DCU, and that's a whole different video to be talked about here. But one of the things I love about the DCU is, at least in the early entries, they did a really fantastic job of asking, okay, what would people be doing in the midst of all this mayhem? Sure.
And I think that's really at the crux of what could be an awesome Godzilla movie is, let's not focus on every big name person we can. Let's just get a ground perspective of, okay, how are we dealing with all of this going on? You might sometimes see the big monster.
Maybe.
You might sometimes be dealing with a building falling down because the big monster was clumsy.
No, and I agree. I think that they're really great perspectives, and that goes for all the political stuff when you feel like you're in the hallways or you're among these people talking. I really like that you feel like you're there. And also, when there's destruction, like there's that one great scene where, I think it's from the military perspective, the guys on the tanks. And there's that shot, and you feel like Godzilla really is far away, but his tail's so long, and it kind of swoops right in front of the camera. You feel like it's right above you.
Yeah.
Like you're sitting right with them. So perspective-wise, with the POVs and stuff, they do a really good job with that. And like I said, I do agree that there are a lot of characters, and I understand your issue with that, but I kind of get the sense it's like if this was to feel like realism, and we were in the midst of this, you wouldn't have time to get to know anybody. You'd be there just like, okay, what am I doing?
Still find moments to develop characters to give us some sort of perspective, which I think is kind of what ends up shooting this movie in the foot. Mm-hmm. Honestly, kind of to that same end, I think the most impactful scene for me was actually after one attempt to try and stop Godzilla goes horribly, horribly wrong. Mm-hmm. We focus on our heroes in the basically in their kind of research room, and they're all just like completely, you can tell they've been sweating for hours.
Oh yeah,
they're exhausted, they're beat up.
Like it's been days, and like the one guy's like, you could use a shower, a new shirt.
Yeah, like that is such a good human component to it.
That's true.
It tells us a lot about who we're dealing with, and I wish there was so much more of that in this movie because it would have made it even more interesting.
And I guess that adds a little bit of levity. Yes. I just think they were trying to keep to a more serious tone. Like I said, I think the way he did was stylistically to kind of put you there in that situation. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if he was really that focused on character, which I will admit is a bit unusual. And yes, maybe some more moments on a couple of the characters to flesh them out more instead of some of them. Maybe some of the outer national subplots could have cut 10, 15 minutes.
It's one of those, like,
maybe.
You can have your cake and eat it too. You just don't need to throw everything in the kitchen sink at everyone. Like, I'm enjoying this monster. I'm enjoying the setup. But give me a reason to be on board. And the movie never really gives me that.
Oh. Well, yeah, that stuff didn't bother me too much, though. I will admit, I felt the length a little more this time, and I was like, okay, maybe as much as I do like the detail about the political red tape, I'm like, maybe we could have cut down it on a little.
Yeah.
But I think we can divert to really the main selling point, which is Godzilla himself.
Yes.
Which, I mean, you said it. I mean, watching it again, and I watched it on the small screen. I have to say, when Godzilla just uses his fire breath for the first time and does the whole new technique with his spine shooting everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's got the shifting of color, that purple, blue, mm-hmm. and of course you've got, this scaly, volcanic almost looking carcass of his armor, and the weird almost mandible like jaw extending really weirdly.
Yes.
And those cold eyes, like and Tokyo's just on fire and things are exploding. It's like, okay, we got concentrated beams, and then it's more flame, and then it can shoot from his tail and all this. It's just, I'm literally horrified by the possibility of this creature because I believe it's there with these mm-hmm. people.
Oh, yeah.
But it also looks beautiful. I'm just in awe of the special effects on display.
Oh, yeah. I thought the tail was probably the weirdest effect.
It was a strange design, but I'm like, it makes it more alien and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like, what the heck?
Like,
it's almost like another mouth or something. It's really weird.
Absolutely.
It's really weird.
One thing I remember reading about very early on in terms of this coming out was the MonsterVerse Godzilla was described to the design people as, okay, you're 5 years old and you've just seen Godzilla. Mm-hmm. Draw what he would see.
Oh.
Shin Godzilla, I should say, mm-hmm. was essentially invented on the concept of, you just had a nightmare about Godzilla, bring that to life. Mm-hmm. And it looks and feels like that, especially when we start getting the mandible thing.
The weird like jaw splitting, like that's really weird.
It looks less like a monster and more like a legit mutation in this, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, it's constantly changing. We don't know what Godzilla will do next because he could grow wings or he could make himself smaller. Like Godzilla is much more malleable and once again he's like this pure destructive force, but kind of much like only a couple of the movies, really. He feels just much more destructive and almost malicious, and like it feels evil. And I mean, that's the design. It's like the shadowy.
Very much so.
There's something about it that's almost supernatural. Like, and obviously they're saying it really scientifically, like it's an animal, but the presentation just harkens back to like, this thing is here. Why? Just to destroy, I guess. Mm. Like that's all, and it's scary.
It is angry. It is hurting. It does not care about anything but just tearing everything in its wake apart.
Which once again is clearly another allegory of like, okay, this is some kind of reckoning, and I think that's obviously speaking to a lot of history with the Japanese themes, but it feels very powerful and it feels very, very disturbing at a lot of points. But like I said, I can't think of really any other Godzilla movie that from that perspective had me literally awed. And as he was dropping his jaw to destroy people, my jaw was hanging. Seriously, I agree. I echo the sentiment. I was all struck like as he's going through, and I love how the direct line of beams just cleave through buildings, like the slice, and then the crumbling. It's just wow. Really, it is fantastic and frightening.
Now, if you see Shin Godzilla, obviously it's probably not going to be in theaters for a pretty long time. But
if you ever get the chance,
if you get the chance, get it, watch it on the biggest screen you can, because it's even though those scenes are few and very far between, they are worth the price of admission.
Oh yeah, like I think they're spaced out pretty well. The interesting thing about Godzilla in this movie and most of the time, much like the original, is that even when he's not on screen, you can often feel his presence. Like we always have him in the mind. Sometimes they do a quick shot, like when he's sort of hibernating, like he's just standing there perfectly still, which is really interesting about this Godzilla. Is that much like the classic one, when he gets to his main form, he's actually rather stiff for a lot of it.
Yeah.
And then he ends up being very statuesque, you might say.
Just the end. A little bit.
Which is interesting because you'd think that would bother me, but it's just you can almost feel the heaviness and the mass of this thing slowly moving.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's always given the vibe that like this is something that is massive, heavy, and incredibly unstable.
And powerful.
Yes,
just in general,
and incredibly powerful in ways you wouldn't expect. Ergo, the spikes.
The spikes,
which just terrified me in the theater when I saw them. But
the spikes are great. The atomic breath is great. It's just the eyes, man.
Yeah,
the eyes, and the mutation angle is really cool. And I believe this one was combo, right? This was like the suit and some CGI, right?
Yes, it was kind of like this nice blend of old meets new. I still don't think Toho has necessarily, how do I put this, found the right balance for CGI.
They don't do CGI good, is what he's saying.
That's not what I said. I said it's not the level I think they want it to be.
Well, look, and I don't know the logistics of this, but I heard once a long time ago that in Japan, obviously, with anime being as big as it is, just animation, cartoons, that is a huge output. There is more money into that than there is for live action stuff over there, which I find interesting. So whenever there's CGI, like say in an anime live action adaptation, usually shows, and sometimes looks stylistically okay, but it's clearly CGI.
Right.
This one I actually think is some of the best I've ever seen because of that blend, at least with Godzilla himself.
I think it got better as it went along. I think when we start getting biped, it looked a little goofy, but
when he first becomes, when he's kind of wobbling
googly
around.
Eye.
Oh yeah, we did want to talk. I've always liked Googly Eye. I know you don't like Googly Eye. That's
Googly Eye is adorable.
He's such a cute. But and that's my example when I talked about with them. It's like that's the perfect example of it's kind of cute, but it's also kind of horrifying because he's got those dead fish eyes.
He's got the dead fish eyes, and he's bleeding everywhere.
He's bleeding. He's like there's drooping weird toxins, and he's this giant thing coming towards you. I wouldn't want to be there. That's hard. He's terrified. So it's funny, but it's like no, he seems alien throughout it.
Oh yeah, that's never a question. I mean, they do a really good job of establishing that straight up. One is just a giant like floating tail.
His tail is also kind of the co-star of the movie. His tail is almost like
in a weird way, it's almost like a little character.
It is. It's like almost like twice the length of him or something. It's big. Yeah. It's always moving. That's where most of the movement is, and it's interesting. Does he? He doesn't really move his arms like at all in the movie.
No, I remember I showed it to my brother a couple years ago, and he really, really got into it.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember he was looking things up, and I think he found something that said, like, eventually they were going to try and, like, have him balance on his tail or something else to that effect. And I've always been curious to see how much truth there was to that statement. Like, obviously the tail was a big component to this design.
Yeah.
And I know some people weren't in love with it. I thought it was interesting. I think most of the time when it's like too thick, it's a little it's a little overkill.
Yeah, it almost seemed like it would be so thick that it might like weigh him down. Like is that the tail was literally like it was so huge. You're like it might be overdoing it a little. Like it's not dragging because it's like there's that short snub right behind him, and then it's just all up in the air, wag. I don't know. I guess he's got a lot of control of it. His tail's pretty iconic. You can't. I give him a tail.
You got to find a way to like split the difference, and I think that's one thing I really did like about the design is. It is a giant tail, but it has kind of this almost Doc Ock tentacle personality to it.
I heard a theory once that it could almost be like becoming another life form, like he could split to become another Godzilla, because just
well, I mean, you saw the last image, right?
Well, yeah, the last image, but you got like the the mouth at the end, so it's like it's kind of implying that, and it's just really weird, and I don't know. I also. I even though it is kind of a blend of new things, it's still hearkening a bit to the original design because it's still got the kind of spiny, jutting teeth too.
Yes,
the little needle ones, which I've always liked. That they haven't really done that in a long time.
I was gonna say that's a kind of like nice throwback, and
usually
that's one thing I've always kind of liked about Shin Godzilla is it finds a way to do callbacks without seeming
really obvious about it.
Without seeming obvious about it, but more making it feel more ingrained. Like when the military theme plays in the finale, it's kind of this nice little like.
That's levity.
I was gonna say it's a nice throwback, but it doesn't feel out of place. It doesn't feel weird. It just feels kind of engaging.
You got the two big iconic musical pieces, and I mean they've got Godzilla's kind of original theme mix, the dun, but it's kind of wobbling, much like he is. Like it's almost like mutating and unstable. So that was a good mix. But I like that. I was kind of waiting the whole movie, like, hey, this is the return of Godzilla. Where's the military music? Where's the death march of we must be so happy because we're not going to make it? Why are they sending us? Yeah, it was kind of like an in joke for us because it's so upbeat. Like even though it's like they're gonna die horribly. But I like that when it came back. The weird thing about it was pretty clear cut and it was straightforward and kind of triumphant because they actually do succeed, which is one of the few times I think that they kind of use it like that.
On that same note, let me ask you something, Joe.
Sure.
Do you think it was a little too clean cut in terms of triumphant?
Yes.
I would agree too, because it's trying to play up the idea of
Japan,
we got to be aware of these casualties, we got to be aware of these things. Like, I feel like there should have been more of that. Like we got an idea of these terrified people fleeing from a city that literally is wiped off the map halfway through the movie, and then we decide, okay, we're gonna finally stand up, and it almost works too well.
Maybe a little too smoothly. I mean, they do lose a whole unit. It's probably like hundreds of guys, but I kind of like it a little because it's kind of almost suggesting, like, whenever there's like a disaster crisis, which I think this is also commenting on the earthquakes and tsunamis and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So definitely. It's like a lot of how government handles disaster relief. Like maybe there is a way that these situations can be resolved, problem solving wise, that aren't just more destructive. Yeah. So I kind of liked that angle, and that the scientists found a less intense way. But it's also, once again, a bit subversive because usually we do want a big battle with the military or with another monster. So but I thought it was okay.
I was going to say I didn't really have an issue with the solution they came up with. Mm-hmm. It was more, I think, if you're trying to create a story with stakes, we need more things to go wrong. If you're going to try and play up we need to focus on accountability.
That was a big theme in the movie, and like kind of I was actually thinking what was going to happen was, as kind of way to caveat it, was that okay, we have no other options, so U.S. is going to drop the super bomb, but Godzilla is either going to destroy it before it hits him up in the air, or he's going to absorb the radiation to get stronger, and then, oh no, we do have to do the thing. So so in a way, Tokyo wouldn't have gotten destroyed, so we could have had that teased, but they could have still used that option and then had to go this route well. So I actually thought, watching it again, because I didn't remember the details, that I'm like, okay, so the U.S. is going to try and it's not going to work because, at least in this movie, it's not like the American one where it's like, I will tell you, that
what happened.
Godzilla feeds off radiation. Well, we're going to use nuclear bombs anyway, but he feeds on radiation. Well, we don't care because America. Like, so you literally have a guy explaining you the plot, telling David Stradlin this, and it's just like, no. Yeah, so
this is not going to go well for you.
So at least they're like, okay, we literally don't know what else to do. We don't know for sure if he'll feed off of it. So
I think just need the biggest, nastiest thing we got and throw it at him.
So they should have just done that first, and then okay, now we'll use the freezing thing.
Yeah,
that's what I would have done.
That could have been an interesting angle. I would have probably had some issues with the whole with the whole, okay, now we got to continue bashing America, but
but I like that everybody had to agree. Like, like Japan had to sign off on it, which is the hard thing to do. Like, and that kind of led into the theme of we can recover from this. We'll do it.
We've got to try and take a risk here and prove it to ourselves that we can do this our way.
As uncomfortable as it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, that is good. One thing that surprised me about this one too is as good as it was, like it pretty well received and definitely a nice fresh take in comparison to the American ones.
Absolutely.
Godzilla kind of getting popular again. Is there work for a sequel? Like, I didn't hear much really.
The short answer is yes and no. That we're going to get more in. I don't even know what the formal term is for this universe.
The decade.
I'm kind of just calling it Shin at this point until somebody calls it something.
It's the Toho currently.
Yeah. There's been a bunch of different reports. The way they're making it sound right now is they're kind of following an MCU format, kind of like Phase 1, where there's a bunch of stories told in the same universe. Oh. So we've got Shin Godzilla now. Shin Ultraman is either going to be out this year or next year.
I did hear about that.
They have not dropped a trailer, but
I thought they did like a teaser a long time ago. Was that fake? What was that?
I think that was a fake.
Oh, shoot.
I've seen the promos. I've seen a couple of the images. I think there's a place for Ultraman. It definitely wasn't the Netflix series. We won't go there. But that was weird. But
it's okay. I didn't watch it.
Yeah, but I think there's a way to bring Ultraman in a modernized format, and I think it would be really cool to see how Ultraman fits in a Godzilla universe. So I think there's going to be more Shin stories. I know they mentioned that there might be a Destroy All Monsters kind of scenario at some point. I don't know when that's exactly going to happen, but I know the one thing they said straight up is don't expect a direct sequel to Shin Godzilla.
Okay. Well, that's fair, I guess. There could always be another Godzilla that comes up. That's fine. It's just that if they go with this style, I guess they're going to have to really play more with CGI, because if you have different monsters fighting, there's going to be a lot more movement.
Yeah, my guess is we're going to see Shin Godzilla again. It's just probably not going to be as direct. Think like how instead of getting Man of Steel 2, we got Batman vs Superman.
Yeah,
which is for better or worse. I'll defer to your judgment, but
very.
But I think we'll get more storyline regarding what happens next, what the future looks like, and Shin Ultraman is also directed by Hideaki Anno. So
okay, I was going to say, is it the same director? So
it's the same director. I think he's trying to do the entire universe, which probably means we're in for a very, very, very long haul.
Yeah, seriously.
But at the same time, it could be worth it.
Consistency, at least.
Yeah, consistency and an actual idea.
Yeah, strong vision that he gets to see through, which that's good. You don't really see that happening too much in the
No, usually it's like every 2 years, we'll do another movie, regardless of if it's good.
And it's like, well, all right, what director wants to do it? Okay, you think you're the one for the job. It might be totally different.
Exactly.
That's one of your issues with the MCU.
Yep.
A little inconsistent at times, but it's fine. I wonder if, because I remember in the movie they said, okay, he might be asleep for like 2-3 years. So I was thinking, okay, were they planning,
which would make sense,
2019 or 2020? And well, with obviously everything that happened, maybe that pushed things off as well.
I was going to say, I don't think anyone was expecting 2020. So
no, I don't think. No, probably at least not lately.
No.
But no, man. I think Shin Godzilla is. I still think it's very good.
Yeah.
I do agree it has maybe some issues upon the second time, but my favorite things about it, I still really liked. I still my one real gripe with it was ironically one of the most fleshed out characters, which was the very forced Japanese American ambassador lady who's like, I don't know. I get that's a fantastical thing, but I'm like, insert character maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, like, okay, we get it. If you're gonna play the whole I wanna like try and segue to America angle, which could be interesting. I think there's kind of this there's this loose commentary on just like, okay, here's how Americans handle Godzilla, here's how we handle Godzilla.
Shoot it.
Like, they're doing it, but they're doing it wrong, and now we're doing it right. Like, my brother made a really interesting point, I want to say, like, a couple months ago.
Sure.
Which is like, okay, Toho's got the tone, but they're not quite there from a technological standpoint.
No.
The U.S. does not have the tone, but they've got the resources to make Godzilla look amazing. I would love to see the two just say, you know what, let's put our creative energies together and just make the best freaking Godzilla movie we ever made.
Well, that's a great ideal, and I hope it happens. But once again, that's a money thing. Who gets what?
Yeah.
And you're right. Who knows Godzilla better than Japan? Nobody.
Well, the other problem is I believe their one rule was Toho cannot release a Godzilla movie.
Oh, yeah.
The same year as Warner Brothers is putting out a MonsterVerse movie.
That's actually really interesting that they do share rights kind of on the character. Mm-hmm. That is kind of at least a joint sort of agreement.
Yeah.
Huh.
Which I'm not entirely against, and I think
you do it your way, we do it our way.
I think it's interesting that we have Toho Godzilla, got Shin Godzilla over here. Mm-hmm. We've got American Godzilla, MonsterVerse, what have you, over here, and then we got Godzilla Singular Point on Netflix.
Yeah, there's Godzilla stuff popping over, so there's clearly interest in it.
Yeah, it's like
in the consciousness.
How do we get this to stay? Because I'm not entirely convinced the MonsterVerse is long for this world. But
I'm not sure. I will say one random thought I had. Of all the MonsterVerse stuff, I think Rodan is actually my favorite part. Oddly enough,
go on.
And I would really like to see a Shin Rodan.
That'd be fun.
I think that would be interesting. Another dark, weird, flying thing. Yeah. I just think he'd be really. I think that would be interesting too.
Kind of reinvent his mythology.
Yeah, maybe you could do a couple Rodans around there, and also with being sort of the first focus of a Singular Point. I've just been interested of. I don't know. Rodan's been kind of making a comeback. I underestimated him
a little bit.
A long time ago. He's never really gone away. He's always kicking.
Absolutely.
Or flying, I guess.
You can say that.
Much like them.
Yeah.
It's a callback. Well, man, no, this was good.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say about it?
No, I think this is a good entry point for things to come. I'm more curious to see when the next big announcements are going to start sparking up.
Yeah, I hope so. Maybe next time we talk, there'll be more news. It's hard to say these days. A lot of things are kind of stop and start.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's more Godzilla on the way.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll talk about him on here again. I think, I know the rest of the year after I get this uploaded, it'll probably be kind of quiet. Maybe some point around the beginning of the new year, we might be able to think of some stuff. So
sneak something in.
In the meantime, if you're still listening, please give us suggestions. We do have a couple other movies we want to tackle.
I've got a few on the back burner, but I absolutely would love to hear from our listeners in terms of where could we go from here? What should we explore? Do we keep it weird, or do we just have full-on discussion videos, which I think could be also very interesting in and of themselves?
They're touching on kaiju-related topics.
Yeah, just sort of exploring, even just deconstructing the idea of what is a kaiju.
Oh yeah, that could be a good video or two for sure. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we'll have some other stuff in a couple months, but in the meantime, if you have any thoughts, let us know. And I guess that's the point where we say goodbye.
Till the next time, everybody.
All right, see y'all.